The pumpkin spice latte is overpriced, oversweetened, and has zero real pumpkin in it. Today we're gonna change that by making my ultimate pumpkin spice recipe from scratch using a real pumpkin. First things first, meet our star. This is the humble sugar pumpkin, also known as a pie pumpkin or a baking pumpkin. This little guy is sweeter and less fibrous than these ginormous carving pumpkins. These ones are way more fibrous and don't really have much natural sweetness, so just use these ones for carving. You might also be tempted to get these decorative pumpkins. These ones do not roast well, they're not sweet, they're extremely fibrous. These ones are just for decorating. Do not use these for purees. Before we can use this pumpkin, we need to roast it and turn it into a puree, which is actually easier than it sounds. Start with a sturdy cutting board. You can place a damp towel underneath to prevent any slipping. Using a sharp knife, carefully slice off the stem to create a stable base. Stand the pumpkin upright on the flat surface and carefully slice down the middle from top to bottom. If it's a bit tough, don't force it. Just use like gentle rocking motions with the knife. Once you open it up, you'll find all these seeds and stringy bits. Just grab a spoon and scoop them all out. If you have an easier and more efficient way to do this, please let me know in the comment section because I hate scooping out the seeds. And if you're curious, yes, you can roast these seeds, so put them in a bowl and set them aside. If you're strapped on time, you can cut the halves into smaller pieces, but if you're not, then just place both halves onto a baking sheet and throw into the oven. These will roast at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for about 35 to 40 minutes. Roasting times can vary depending on your oven, so start checking around that 30-minute mark. You're looking for the pumpkin to be fork tender and slightly caramelized at the edges. While our pumpkins are roasting in the oven, we can get everything else ready for our syrup. We'll start with 2 cups of dark brown sugar. I prefer dark brown sugar because it gives you a richer flavor. If you don't, then use light brown sugar. We'll need 1 tablespoon of pumpkin pie spices. If you're somebody who doesn't actually like those little spice granules in your syrups, you can use this pumpkin pie extract. It tastes very similar to the real spices without giving you those little granules. We'll need 1 teaspoon of vanilla bean paste, 1.5 cups of filtered water, and of course, a 1/2 cup of our freshly made pumpkin puree. Speaking of that, it's probably done in the oven now, so let's go get that. Now that our pumpkin is perfectly roasted and smells amazing, we'll let it cool slightly so we don't burn ourselves, and then we'll peel off that outer skin. Then toss the roasted pumpkin into a food processor or a blender and blend it until it's smooth and creamy. If yours is coming out a bit thick, add a splash of water to help it along. The first thing you might notice is when you make pumpkin puree, the color is more vibrant and lighter than pumpkin puree from a can. Isn't that weird? I feel like that's weird. Now that we have our fresh pumpkin puree, let's make this syrup. In a saucepan, combine all of your ingredients over medium heat, stirring until the sugar completely dissolves. For me, it took about 5 minutes for that sugar to fully dissolve, and then I let it simmer for another 10 to 15 minutes to let it thicken up. This simmering process is what distinguishes a good pumpkin spice syrup to a great pumpkin spice syrup, so don't get impatient. After that simmering process, we'll let the syrup cool and transfer it over to a syrup bottle for storage. You can use a mason jar or a syrup bottle like this, but these are my all-time favorite bottles to use. I love being able to just squirt out exactly how much I need without any mess. Funny enough, these are actually from my Weber grill accessories, but they work perfectly for sauces and syrups. I'll put them in the description if you want to get the same ones. If you don't have sleight of hand pro like I do, use a funnel for this part so you don't spill your syrup everywhere. Seal it up, and there you have it, homemade pumpkin spice syrup ready for weeks to come. Now that our syrup's ready, it's time for the espresso. Fresh beans are absolutely essential. I'm using a medium roast with chocolate and caramel notes to complement our pumpkin spice. When I make fall drinks, I prefer coffee with more roasty characteristics. This means I'm usually looking for a medium to dark roasted coffee with things like baker's chocolate, caramel, and spices listed on the flavor notes. Using the WDT tool, which stands for Weiss Distribution Technique, we can ensure an even distribution of coffee, leading to a better extraction. While tamping compresses the coffee grounds into a uniform puck, eliminating those gaps and creating consistent density. And these puck screens help keep your machine clean. Lock in your portafilter, pull your shot, and look at that rich velvety crema. It's absolutely beautiful. I'm going with a pretty standard ratio here, a 1:2 ratio, so I'll turn off the espresso when it hits 36 to 38 grams. Now that you have your espresso, let's make some whipped cream. A lot of people don't realize how easy it is to make your own whipped cream. All you need is a whipped cream canister, some vanilla syrup, some heavy whipping cream, and some gas. After you give it a good shake, you have fresh whipped cream. Now it's time to assemble this masterpiece, and of course I'm using the Fleur Ice coffee glasses. Start by filling your glass all the way up with ice. We want lots of ice. Next, pour in the milk of your choice. I'm using whole milk for that creamy richness, but feel free to use almond, oat, or even banana. That might be good actually. Just leave enough room at the top for syrup, espresso, and whipped cream. In goes about a tablespoon of syrup. Notice how I can just squeeze it out. Looks cool, huh? And finally, add your espresso and top it off with some of that whipped cream. You could stop here, but it's really not gourmet unless you top it off with pumpkin pie spices and 1 cinnamon stick. All right, now it's time for the moment of truth. I like to give mine a good stir before sipping. All right, cheers. This, my friends, is how a pumpkin spice latte should taste. No artificial flavorings, no overly sweet syrups, and actually has pumpkin in it.